Hi, this is Marlin Woods, founder of the Woods Plan Executive Leadership Coaching. And I'm spending time here at the Leadership Café with Michael Couch and Richard Citrin. And today we're going to discuss, are leaders born or are they made? Leadership is a responsibility. And should leaders serve or should they be out front? So join us for a wonderful time to have a conversation that's organic, that's fun, and that's unique. Hopefully, we all may learn something in this or be inspired in one way or another. Join me, Leadership Cafe. I'm Marlin Woods.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the Leadership Cafe, where we talk to extraordinary people leading remarkable businesses and leading remarkable communities. We're your hosts. I'm Michael Couch.
And I'm Richard Citrin, and today we are thrilled to have Marlin Woods joining us. Marlin is a longtime friend. He is executive director of the Benefits Plus Consulting Company, a vendor management firm that focuses on health and wellness benefits for insurance companies and large employers. More importantly, I don't know if it's more important, but more important to me, Marlin is a community leader. He's involved in probably a dozen or more organizations here in the Pittsburgh region, just providing his leadership expertise. He's also a national speaker on sales and leadership, and he has devoted his life and his work to leadership. And so we're expecting and hoping for a lot of great wisdom from you today. Marlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. What an honor.
Well, Marlin, tell us, we always like to begin by asking people to tell a little bit about their leadership journey. What were some of the important elements of your professional and personal life that led you to see yourself as a leader? And for us in our work around strategy-driven leadership, we focus on and emphasize the behaviors of leadership.
Sure.
What were some of the experiences that helped you gain some of those skills that you have and share with others so willingly?
Well, first and foremost, again, thank you for having me, Richard and Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. I love when I'm asked this question because the answer speaks directly to how leaders are developed, quite frankly. First and foremost, I tell or share or preach a philosophy that leaders are absolutely born. They are not made. You can coach leadership. That's different. You can train leadership principles and behaviors, but leaders are absolutely born. They're born with this innate burden to serve or to solve. And so when they discover a dysfunction, that dysfunction weighs as a heavy burden up on them because they are the ones who possess a burden or a talent or some sort of calling or charge to address or to eradicate or to bridge that gap. And so first and foremost, by birth. And then the second most effective reason or pathway to quality leadership is through mentorship. I was mentored, Richard and Michael, by some of the greatest preachers and men of God on the face of the earth, literally. And then two, having, two wonderful parents, who were both leaders in their own rights, and not only that, gravitating to other leaders as a youth and then, an adolescent, and then a young adult, and even now still as a grown man of 49 years old, I still glean from some of, the wisest men and women in our nation and for some on the globe and in the entire world. And so by birth, and then mentorship, and so I deem mentorship as a responsibility. Leadership as a responsibility. Not necessarily something to strive towards or aspire to, because again, if you're born a leader, then it's innate in you. It's not an aspiration. It's more of a burden.
Do you think that we all have that quality from birth, and that some develop it further, or do you think that there are people who are kind of natural followers and that's the way they're born, and they don't. I don't want to call them lemmings. I don't think that's the case. I think we need to have followers, otherwise, we can't have leaders. Do you think everybody has elements of that quality, or do you think there are people who are, distinguished from birth with that leadership gene, so to speak?
So we're all trained to follow. From birth, we are trained to follow directions. We have parents and we have responsibilities. We have discipline. We have consequences. We have rewards for following. We have teachers and others who are in authority over us. And as a result, we've been taught very successfully, quite frankly, to follow, sometimes in most cases to a fault. So following is, literally our training and from birth until death. And so, as it relates to leadership, leaders also are tremendous followers. These leaders are all oftentimes assumed to be people who have to be in front, or have to be, out front, or have to have the limelight, this insatiability for limelight. That's not always the case with leaders. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you are seeking leadership, then you are not a natural born leader. If you are seeking out leadership, to be at the front of the line. When I was in elementary school, we had what's called a line leader. When the class would line up to go to the bathroom or to go to the next class, you had designated line leaders each day. And a lot of the kids wanted to be in the front of the line. That doesn't necessarily say that you're a leader, much more than it says you want to be in front. So the two are very different. So not sure if that answers the question, but, everyone from birth, leader or not, has been trained to follow. And leaders are actually very good followers because they typically glean from and gravitate to other natural born leaders to glean leadership or mentorship rather from.
Yeah. Marlin, I was a line leader, but my teacher always told me it was because I was the tallest in the class, so everybody could see me.
You didn't need the little flag then, Richard.
No, I didn't need the little flag. I'd raise my hand so people could find me, but it was pretty easy. So, so that was an assigned leadership role for me.
Marlin, I don't think we've had a guest when we've asked them about key things in their journey that made a difference as a leader that hasn't mentioned mentors and hasn't mentioned the importance of that other people played in their life. And I see that you've really done a lot of work on establishing mentorship, particularly in the community. Tell us a little bit about that, and what, particularly for leaders who are listening, what do you think it is the key to being a successful mentor?
So I often say, and this can be argued, but I often say mentors choose who they mentor. They identify who they mentor. Now, we're often taught to seek out mentors, but it is the mentor that identifies the mentee because they've navigated this terrain prior. So if I've navigated the terrain prior, then I can recognize who's on that same course. It's much like the movie The Rock, where Sean Connery plays this escape artist from Alcatraz. And he's escaped from Alcatraz twice. He's in a maximum security prison. The United States military comes to him to seek him out as a consultant because a rogue general goes into Alcatraz, locks it down to launch biological weapons from over San Diego. Over the Bay Area. And so the reason that they asked or went to this person who is an escape artist of maximum security, quite frankly, a convict and a criminal, to lead them in this conquest or this navigation through Alcatraz into Alcatraz is because he escaped from it. So that's the picture of a mentor, someone who has navigated the terrain prior, who then recognizes the course of action of another person who is on that same course. So mentors are very, very, very important. Mentors also, now what a mentor is not, mentor isn't a psychologist. A mentor isn't a therapist. That's not the responsibility of a mentor. The mentor doesn't make the decision for you. A mentor is merely a compass that identifies where you are. So I tell my mentees, my responsibility is to be the legend of the map of a mall. So when you go into a mall, there's a red dot that says, you are here. And in the grand scheme of where you ultimately want to go, this is where you are at this point, standing in front of this legend. And so that's the responsibility of a mentor. The responsibility of a mentor isn't to say, go do this, because then that mentor is then held accountable if there is failure on the part of the mentee for making a decision that might not be a fit for that mentee or that course of action. So the mentor's responsibility is to only say, I've navigated this terrain prior. I see the course you're on. That tells me that you are here. Now, your responsibility as the mentee is to make the decision of navigation from here on ultimately where you want to go, now that you know exactly where you are.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm very intrigued by the language you use too. So the burden of leadership and the burden of mentorship. So it's an obligation that a leader has, and we had a previous guest who said, when I was young, I went looking and I asked everybody, will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? And everybody, no. But the idea that as a leader, looking for those opportunities and having the burden and viewing as a burden to mentor others is a great perspective. I love that. Yeah. Is that how you view it?
I do, actually. Like I said, to reiterate, it is the mentor that chooses the mentee. Yeah. Because a mentor can't be effective mentoring any and everybody. There has to be an affinity. There has to be an affection, a connection to not just the mentee, his or herself, but the course that mentee is on, that you identify with it, which is why it's necessary as the mentor to be able to understand the course that the mentee is on, because you've navigated this terrain prior.
You know, we talk a lot in our work, Marlin, about the importance of leaders gaining practical experience, real life experience, as opposed to, we might go into a company and we speak to them about their leadership program. They say, yeah, we send all of our people to a leadership workshop.
Yeah.
And we say, great. What happens when they come back? Well, they report back to their group about what they heard. And we go, okay, that's good. That's about 10% of their learning. Where's the other 90% of coaching, mentoring, and experiences? Have there been some significant experiences for you that helped shape your leadership philosophy and your approach to leadership?
Absolutely. 100%, Richard. I love this question also, because it allows me to be able to, so to speak, in very short form, tell the story of how I was able to recognize my responsibility in leadership, because that's quite frankly what it is. It's a responsibility. It's a role to play. It doesn't make me the most important. It's a role to play as a result, or to reach ultimately a result for the greater good of the group or the mass. And so recently, both of you are well informed that I ran for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. And in that experience of running for mayor, due to recognizing the responsibility, or I should say, the mandate or charge of leadership that rests on me, it is once again the innate response of a leader to raise his or her hand, or to stand up and say, I'll go. And so, or I'll do it, or I have the solution, based upon certain skill sets that, the leader possesses. And so, one, most importantly, the ability to inspire, which should be before strategy, inspiration, then strategy, and then outcomes. And so, or results. And so running for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, for me, just the running itself and being able to talk with literally thousands of people, not necessarily one at a time, but also in large public speaking settings, also one at a time, also at farmers markets and other venues and galas and shopping malls and in grocery stores, and hearing the needs and the angst from people and in what they desire their own personal realities to look like or to be like or to feel like. And what my responsibility in that as raising their standard of quality, because quite frankly, that's the leader's role. It is literally to raise the quality of life or the standard of quality for those that he or she is responsible for. And so through that experience of running for mayor, you recognize that this is beyond you. This is not about being the line leader. This is not about being in front. This is not about being in the media. This is not about having the notoriety. This is literally about playing the role of responsibility to raise that standard of quality for everyone that I was responsible for. And the first is inspiration. And then the second is service. So that is just one example of the responsibility of leadership that, makes or breaks a person who either is aspiring to be a leader or one who is naturally born to be a leader.
Well, yeah. So I think your message, particularly from the importance of inspiration for a leader, and maybe there might be a lack of inspiration when it comes to community leadership. Any guidance that you have for community leaders in particular right now about, given the sort of where we are as a society, the kinds of things that you think would help make a difference for our community leaders?
Outstanding question. And I wasn't sure if you all were going to ask it, but I'm glad that you did.
Good.
Recognizing that leadership or even being a leader is first a responsibility. It's a responsibility. It is not a career choice. So if you were not in public office, or if you were not the executive director of a community nonprofit, and you are a leader, you have a responsibility to provide solution, to provide input, to provide direction, to provide inspiration, to quite frankly influence outcomes or shift the trajectory of another person's life. So looking at this or seeing it for what it actually is, and that's the opportunity to serve based on a certain set of skills that you possess, either through talent or through training, to lend or to provide for the greater good of that standard of quality being raised is the ultimate responsibility of a leader. So this isn't something that you're necessarily running to do. You can do it without running for office and be just as effective. And this is what divides those who want to be line leader from those who have an innate ability to solve problems. And so my advice to community leaders of all sorts, elected officials and those who are in roles that are paid and those who are, community volunteers. The very first thing is to recognize is that you have a responsibility. And not only that, if you are a natural born leader, you won't be able to sleep anyway. There is this innate burning desire, this burden that weighs heavily up on your shoulders to provide the solution. And you will not be able to sleep until you begin addressing or eradicating the dysfunction or fulfilling the gap. And so, get in touch with what weighs heavily up on you, which agitates you to creativity. Whatever agitates you to creativity, the solution lies therein. So hopefully that answers the question.
Marlin, you set a very high bar around leadership because we had someone on a few weeks ago who was sharing with us about her career and how she was a tremendous success as a salesperson for this organization.
Sure.
And eventually she got promoted to sales manager. That's kind of the analogy I use about the person who's a great car salesman, then they get promoted to being a sales manager. They know nothing about managing. And I think, I don't know if we see this in politics. I think we probably do. We certainly see it in business, where a lot of the people, as you were saying earlier, are not natural born leaders. So we're not seeing them, come from a place of responsibility. They're coming from a place of almost the burden. I have the burden of leadership. My company made me the boss. I've got to do this. And what do you tell those people? Do they have to dig deeper in their soul? Do they, the expression Michael and I often use is working in service to. You use the servant leadership comment there. We talk about being in service to the business or the community or the greater good, whatever that might be. Many people, I don't think, necessarily hold that as a core value of leadership.
Sure.
Have you seen that? And what do you say to those people who maybe want to do, earnestly want to do a better job in leadership, but they're not really sure they want to take on that level of responsibility?
Great question. So service is the answer. Service. Remembering that you are ultimately serving. And so now with that service, Richard, where does my skill sets or can my skill sets add the most value? And in that, there I can demonstrate most effectively leadership. And so rather than it's been given to me, now I have to actually do leadership. That's not effective leadership. And you will almost always fail at doing leadership versus being a leader and serving, which is what the role of leadership or a leader actually is. Mm-hmm. It is the chief servant. So if it's the chief servant or the lead servant, then your responsibility is to do the most amount of serving, the most amount of contributing, which is, I love this word, to contribute or contribution. You're making the greatest contribution. And in making the greatest contribution, you can only make a contribution where you have it to give. So it's to tap into what you actually have, not what you don't have. And when most folks say, I don't know what to do, or I don't know that I want that, what they're actually saying or what they're actually focusing on is what they don't possess. So it's actually seeing what you actually do have, recognize, which is why it has to be an innate agitation to solve a particular function, a problem or dysfunction. So service would be the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. We work with a lot of organizations to try to understand their leadership pipeline, the capability of their leaders, and often they reflect to it. Well, what did the person accomplish?
Sure.
We find that that's often gives us a very narrowest perspective. But the point you just made, how much does the individual contribute to the success of others? And how much do they align what they're doing to help support others get their work done or get their support accomplished? It tells us much, much more about the capability of the organization. So I love your perspective there. So it's how much you contribute to others, how much you bring to the table and serve others versus what you personally accomplish yourself. Great.
That's right. You're 100% right. Michael, you're 100% right.
Yeah, so I think we're at the point of the program where we ask our proverbial question that we ask all of our guests. That is, rather than thinking over the last few years what the pandemic has done to us, what would you say the pandemic has done for you?
I love this question. When the pandemic began, I saw it then as an opportunity to level the playing field. Because everything stopped. So now taking the or the opportunity to improve Marlin is what the pandemic has done for me, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and even intellectually. I haven't read that many books in that in that short amount of time in any span of my life prior to. And they were all books on personal development. So I was able to get acquainted with some of the godfathers of personal development, in Earl Nightingale and Napoleon Hill and Jim Rohn and Bob Proctor. These are some of the people that I truly gleaned from during that time. And what the pandemic has done for me. I also ran for mayor in a pandemic. And so, within a pandemic. And so one of the most important things that the pandemic has done was it's made my new house a home. I travel lots. My wife travels lots. So when they shut things down, our kids had two parents in the household at the same time for an extended period of time. So we actually took advantage of that, spent time together, made the new house a home where we ate dinner together versus, getting it, sitting together and, mom serves kids. We go in the dining room, kids eat in the kitchen. And no, we were actually eating together. So for me, as it relates to my career, so to speak, I was able to pivot in that. I mean, through my mayoral candidacy, I actually sold my business, which was one of the hardest things to do, to sell, because I built it. It was my baby. I sold Benefits Plus. I have a board seat now there, and I no longer run it, so to speak, if you will, because my responsibility was to show forth that I was all in. A responsibility of a leader is also sacrifice. And so I was able to sacrifice a business that I built for the greater good of those whom I could pay attention to and truly, put all of my efforts of service into them. So the pandemic, my wife says it to me all the time, and it's the greatest compliment I've ever received. What the pandemic has done for me is it is massaged growth in me. It's massaged maturity in me. And, and it's also allowed me to stop and pay attention to the things that are around me that, quite frankly, create the effective professional or the effective leader that I am. So that's what the pandemic has done for me. Personal development has been the blessing of my life, as well as, making my house a home. And so, the pandemic has not been a terrible experience for Jessica and me. It was a blessing right at the right time. We needed the break. We needed the pause. We needed the halt at this particular juncture in our time when we have 4 children, ranging from 15 all the way to 5. So we have the gamut, so it was really an opportunity to love on our children, to love on each other, and to grow ourselves personally. And it wasn't just myself that grew personally. It was my wife as well, and our children. We all went through this personal development journey in our physical fitness and in our intellect as well, through a number of books and things, while the world was stopped at that time for the ultimate goal of leveling the playing field and coming out ahead during the pandemic. It was, during the pit stop, whoever gets out the fastest after that, has the advantage, and we took it as that.
Why waste a good disaster, as they say? Well, Marlin, it's been fabulous. I really like your emphasis on leadership as service first. If folks would like to connect with you, learn more about Marlin, get to know you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So you can email me at marlin@woodsplan, WOODSPLAN.com, marlin@woodsplan.com, but that's Marlin spelled MARLIN.
And folks can also connect with you on LinkedIn, I assume.
LinkedIn, as well as marlinwoods.com.
Marlinwoods.com. Oh, great.
Marvelous. Well, thank you. When you can listen to the Leadership Café podcast when this one gets published on all the places that you love to watch your favorite podcasts, including Richard's site and our site, also the Leadership Café, a podcast site. We want to make sure we thank our producer, director, tech guru extraordinaire, Chad Barr from the Chad Barr Group, for providing some amazing support. So for all of us at the Leadership Café, thank you for joining in. I'm Michael Couch.
And I'm Richard Citron, and we'll see you at the next Leadership Café.